already get how calculating the diet prescription. So all your diet prescription and how you calculate your diet prescription is all correct in your presentation. So for the other group, for the number of exchanges, so I will discuss again our food exchange list. How will we calculate the number of exchanges for the vegetables? So for the vegetables, again, in our food exchange list, page 4, so it said that it is desirable to allow 2 to 3 exchanges for list A and B vegetable per day. So for the number of your exchanges in vegetable, you have for A, and for A you have 2, and for B we have 1. So in our vegetable exchange list, page 12 and page 13, so group A vegetable contain negligible carbohydrates, protein, and energy if one exchange or less is used. So when 2 exchanges are used, compute as one group B vegetable, unless otherwise specified the portion size for one vegetable exchange is. So for our exchange list, so 2 exchange of group A is 1 exchange of group B. So that's why our vegetable A is 2 and our vegetable B is 1 number of exchanges. So again, our vegetable number of exchanges is 2 to 3. So we have here for vegetable A, we have 2, and for the vegetable list B is 1. Because our 2 exchanges of group A is equivalent to 1 number of exchanges for the group B. So, do you have any other question for the vegetable A, number of exchanges? You may raise your hand if you have a question for the vegetables, number of exchanges. Okay. So, you don't have question for your vegetable. So, for the vegetable, for our fruit number of exchanges, according to our food exchange list, page 4, unless there is need for drastic restriction of simple carbohydrates, 3 to 4 exchanges of fruits per day are reasonable allowance. So for our fruits exchanges, we have 3 or 4 number of exchanges. So we will go to our fruit number of exchanges. So I hope everyone is listening for our food exchange list. So for fruit exchange list, we have 1 exchange is equivalent to 10 grams of carbohydrate. So according to our food exchange list, for the fruit, page 14, we have here 1 exchange is equal to 10 grams. So if your fruit is, you have here 3 to 4 exchanges. So if you use 3 number of exchanges for your fruit, you have to multiply it into 10. So that will be your total carbohydrates for the fruits. And of course, you have no protein and no fat. So we have here for the fruit, if you're using naman 4 number of exchanges for your fruit, so you will also multiply it for the 10. Since in your fruit, 1 exchange is equivalent to 10 grams of carbohydrates. So for your vegetable, you don't have to multiply it because you already have here your subgroup for vegetable A. They have here the equivalent of carbohydrates and protein. So, do you have any question for group number of exchanges? Kindly raise your hand if you have question for your fruit number of exchanges. Okay, so no one raised their hand. So for your milk, the amount and type of milk allowed depends upon the patient needs, so food habits and other economic consideration. So for your milk, page 16, one exchange of each of subgroup of milk contains. So one exchange ang equivalent po ng kada subgroup. For example, kapag ang ginamit nyo ay whole milk or you will use whole milk subgroup, the number of exchanges is 1. And for the low-fat milk, the still number of exchange list is 1. And if you use the very low-fat milk, you will still use 1 number of exchanges. So it will also include naman here, for the whole milk, you have here equivalent protein, carbohydrate, and fats. So you will see naman in your food exchange list, page 16, it depends upon in what we'll use. For example, in the whole milk, for your protein, you have 12, you have 8, and for the carbohydrates, you have 12, and for the fat, you have 10. So you don't have to multiply it in the number of exchanges. Again, for your milk, you don't have to multiply the number of your exchanges in your fat, protein, and carbohydrates. So if you have your question for the milk number of exchanges, kindly raise your hands. Okay. For our sugar, according to our food exchange list, allow 5 to 9 teaspoons of sugar per day unless contraindicated. So, for our sugar, page 26, we have here, one exchange is equivalent to 5 grams of carbohydrates. So for your sugar, if you will choose 5 number of exchanges for your sugar, so you have to multiply it into 5 for your carbohydrates, since one exchange is equivalent to 5 grams of carbohydrates. So if your number of exchanges in your sugar, you have 5, you will multiply it into 5 for your carbohydrates. And if you will use 6, 7, 8, and 9 number of exchanges, you will also multiply it for 5. So again, for sugar, we have 5 to 9 number of exchanges is allowed unless contraindicated. For example, your sample meal is low sugar and you have your 5. So you will use their 5 number of exchanges. For example, you will plan for meal, lunch, and you have your low sugar. So you will use it. For example, it is the 5 list number of exchanges. You can put in your lunch only 1 number of exchanges since you have low sugar diet. Okay. So that is our number of exchanges for sugar. Can you raise your hand if you have question for our sugar number of exchanges? Miss Mary Joyce, you have question?
Wala po, ma'am.
Okay, sige. So, no one raised their hand for sugar. So, for the rice, according to our rice number of exchanges in our food exchange list, to determine how many rice exchanges, add the carbohydrates from vegetable, fruit, milk, and sugar, and subtract this sum from the present carbohydrates. So divide the difference by 23. And then the nearest whole quotient is the number of rice exchanges allowed. So your rice number exchanges will depend on your diet prescription prescribed for the carbohydrates. So for your for your meat and fish exchange list, so you will add also the total number of protein from the vegetable until sugar, until rice, sorry. And then you will subtract the prescribed protein. And then the nearest whole quotient is the number of meat and fish exchange allowed. So we have here when calculating grams of fat, meat exchanges, use the fat value that best represent the patient usual intake. There is no need to add or subtract fat exchanges if the appropriate meat and fish category is used in the computation of food allowance. So for our meat and fish exchange list, so we have here this list subdivided into three groups based on the amount of fat and calories: low fat, medium fat, and high fat meat and fish. So it will depends on your prescribed protein, the number of your exchanges, and of course for the total protein, for your partial sum for the protein, it will also uh, depend in your calculation for your protein. So for the fat, you will also add the total fat from your vegetable to meat to get your partial sum. And also you will subtract it for the prescribed fat in your diet prescription. So you will divide it into 5 to get the number of your fat exchanges. So for your fat, you will be able to get the number of your exchanges based on your diet prescribed diet prescription for fat. So again, you have to compute the rice and the meat and the fat number of exchanges based on your diet prescription. So for the rice, if you will able to compute your already compute the number of your exchanges, so you will go to your rice exchange list. We'll look lang the rice exchanges. So for the rice exchanges, we have here our page 17. So nakalagay dito, one exchange is equivalent to 20 grams of carbohydrates and 2 grams for protein. So if you already calculated your number of exchanges for the rice based on your diet prescribed for the carbohydrates, so you will multiply the number of exchanges to 23 for your carbohydrates, and you will multiply your number of exchanges into 2 for the protein. So in your rice exchanges, you need to multiply your number of exchanges in the 23 for carbo and 2 for the protein. So in your meat, wait lang ha. Okay, so for your meat, if you choose your subgroup, for example, you choose the low-fat meat and fish. So the equivalent here is for the protein, you have 8, and for the fat, you have 1. So you have to multiply it in your number of exchanges also. So again, for the meat, it depends upon on what type or subgroup that will you choose in your meat. So for example, you choose low fat meat and fish. So you have to multiply the number of exchanges in protein and in fat. Okay? So if you have question for the meat number of exchanges, so can you raise your hands? Okay. Okay, so no one raised their hand. So for the fat, so for the fat, page 24, we have here one exchange is equal to 5 grams of fat. So you will multiply your number of exchanges in 5 to get the total number of your fat. So if you already computed the number of exchanges in your fat, so you will multiply it into 5 to get your uh, total fat for your fat exchange list. So if you have question for your fat number of exchange list, kindly raise your hands. Okay. So do you have any other concern regarding food exchange list on how will you get or compute the number of exchanges? So can you raise your hand if you have question in your food exchange list? So kindly continue your activity 2, the correction of your activity 2, and of course, your activity 3. So we have your time pa until, okay, we have 1 hour pa to continue your activity 2 and activity 3. So leaders, I know you already give their tasks in your activity 2 and 3. So you will be able to do that since we have our time pa and our skills and lab. So if you have question, kindly raise your hands na lang.
Ma'am, may question po ako.
Yes, Miss Joyce.
Doon po sa quiz po natin, um,
Yes,
doon po sa, what do you call that? Yung DBW po.
desirable body weight.
Yes po.
Mm-mm.
Nakuha ko po kasi ay 56.304. Paano ga po ang kukunin na lang po ay 56.30 or 56.3? For clarification lang po, ma'am.
Wait lang. I-open ko lang yung inyong,
Sure
check ko
po.
lang yung inyong quiz. Yung question ng quiz nyo. Wait lang ha. Okay. So you are 2-4. Mabagal lang yung aking opening ng aking laptop. Wait lang. Wait lang ha. Hindi lang mag-open.
Ma'am, question po, yung activity 3 po is next week po mapapresent po, no?
Clinical kayo next week. So, next week pa.
Next week po. Yes po. Alright
Yes.
po. Okay po. Thank you po.
Class, huwag kayong malilito ha sa inyong schedule. You have week for lecture and you have your week for your clinical. So we have alternate. So kung lecture kayo ngayon, for the next week you are clinical. And so on. So they are alternate schedule. So you don't have to uh mark your attendance during your clinical because your clinical you will have your attendance na in your clinical. So your attendance will be in your clinical na, not in our lecture. So wag lang malilito sa inyong schedule. So alternate ang ating lecture and ang ating clinical. Wait lang ha, hindi ko ma-open. Ano ba gagawin ko dito? Wait lang ha. Naghahang ang aking... Quit ko muna. May error kasi siya. So for your desirable body weight, so you may, for example, you get 41.16, so you may uh, use it as 41. So you may, what do you call that? In your desirable body weight only, you round off it. For example, 41.16, you may use 41 kilos. You will include in your answer 41.16 and the round off answer. So I will be check also. So you may do or continue your quiz if you not yet finished. And for those who are finished in their quiz, you may continue your activity 3 or your activity 2 or your activity 3 in your uh, skills and lab. So we have our time pa para makapagsagot kayo sa inyong quiz and of course para kayo ay makagawa ng inyong activity. So if okay naman na yung
Ma'am,
activity,
tapos,
yes?
ma'am, clarify ko lang po. Di ba po kanina may na-mention po kayo yung food pyramid po na gagawin namin. Bali, yung activity po na yon is for lec po yon.
Yes, for
Sige po.
lectures.
Sige po. Thank you po, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, nag-share po kasi ako. Ano po, ma'am, naano ga po yung DBW po?
You may
Kung-
in your desirable body weight, you may what do you call that? You may round off. For example, you get 41.16, you may use 41. But also include your your not round off answer, okay?
Okay po. So, pwede lang naman din po maging 56.30, yung 56.304.
Again? So,
Um,
kung ang nakuha mo ay 51.304.
56.304 po.
So, you may
Yes.
use 56. 56 kilos.
Okay po.
Yes, because that is
Okay.
desirable body weight. Yes.
Gets po. Thank you po.
Okay.
Ma'am,
Yes.
paano po kung 56.3 po mismo ang ginamit, okay lang din po yun?
Yes. Pwede. Yes,
you
you may use also 56.3 as long as please include your computation. Okay?
Sige po, sige po. Thank you po.
Okay. My checking of your quiz will be based, of course, in your computation and how will you get your answer. So it's okay with me if you will not round off or if you will round off as long as you include there the answer na without round off and the answer that is round off.
Ang akin po, ma'am, na computation ay doon ko po pinasa doon sa isang submission.
Okay. Sure. You may use that for your submission. Okay. Thank you, Demi.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Pwede na po ba kami mag-leave?
If you don't have question na, BSN 24, so you may leave na if you don't have question.
Okay po, thank you.
So, thank you. So, you will have your lunch na. So, meron pa yata kayong klase after ng subject natin. So, yung quiz nyo, until 9 p.m. naman ang submission. So, if you have your concern, please let me know na lang in our group chat. Okay?
Okay po, thank you po.
Okay, thank you, class. So, stay safe.
You too po.
Okay.
Thank you po.
Alam mo yung julam natin. Anong isda?